Throughout history, slave owners have always worried about uprisings by their human property, and the United States was no different. There had been a few revolts, but the most prevalent problem was runaway slaves seeking freedom. But there was one specific rebellion that shocked the country and altered the way laws and attitudes were applied to slave ownership. It would also send a signal that slavery in any form was antithetical to the human desire to be free. Who was Nat Turner? What did he do to initiate such a national uproar? How effective was he, if at all? What was the aftermath of his actions? Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, former history professor, Army and Marine Corps veteran, and welcome to this episode of Forgotten History. Nat Turner was born on October 2, 1800 in Southampton County, Virginia, on the plantation of his owner, Benjamin Turner. Little is known about his mother, Nancy, and we do not know anything about who his father was. One interesting fact is that Benjamin Turner allowed him and his other slaves to be educated, allowing them to learn reading and writing, in particular so they could read the Bible, as there was no law against it at that time. Nat Turner was believed by some people to have a special gift since he could accurately recite events that happened well before he was even born in great detail, and many people believed that he surely would be a prophet. According to the story, his mother and grandmother told him that he was intended for some great purpose, which probably added to his future sense of purpose. As Nat Turner grew into a young man, he became deeply religious, reading the Bible, praying, and even fasting. However, his life was not free of controversy. During his life, he worked on many different plantations. At age 21, he ran away from Samuel Turner, the brother of his former owner, Benjamin, but Nat returned after spending a month hiding out in the wooded areas. His explanation was that he received a sign from God. After Samuel Turner died, Nat Turner became the property of Thomas Moore, and then later, after he died, the property of his widow. When she remarried John Travis, Nat was set to work on that property. Nat Turner may have suffered from mental illness, as he believed in signs and heard divine voices. He admitted that he had a vision of a battle between blacks and whites in 1825. As Nat Turner stated, "The Spirit instantly appeared to me and said the serpent was loosened, and Christ had laid down the yoke he had borne for the sins of men, and that I should take it on and fight against the serpent." Turner also said that he received another sign in 1828 telling him to fight against his oppressors, but this latest message meant I should arise and prepare myself and slay my enemies with their own weapons. But the evidence seems to prove that Nat Turner had carefully planned his rebellion for several years, because he had been discussing his ideas with a small group of other slaves, those he could trust, laying the groundwork. Turner believed that the solar eclipse that occurred in February of 1831 was the signal from God that the time to rise up had come. Turner interpreted the event as the black man's hand covering the sun. He had become a well-respected black preacher, giving sermons which he recited as he recruited other slaves, growing his group to 40 and then 50 men. Turner planned his revolt for July 4th, 1831, but a sudden illness saw him bedridden, which delayed the revolt. But Turner then used the time to better prepare his plan. Ironically, on August 13th, an atmospheric disturbance made the Virginia sun appear bluish-green, which was possibly the result of a volcanic eruption off the coast of Sicily. Turner saw this as his second divine signal, and his men started the rebellion the following week. Turner interpreted the second event, the eruption, as God's signal to slay my enemies with their own weapons. On August 21, 1831, Turner and his supporters revolted against their white owners and killed the entire Travis family, and then continued their rampage throughout Southampton County. They were able to steal some muskets and horses from the whites they killed. As the rebellion gained momentum, Turner accumulated over 70 slaves and free blacks, with many having horses and armed with knives, hatchets, and blunt instruments. Firearms were too difficult to collect and would have drawn unwanted attention. They killed white people without discriminating for age or sex. Turner's white master and his entire family were the first to be killed. Then they traveled from property to property, house to house, freeing slaves who joined his group and killed all the white people that they could find. Turner called on his group to kill all the white people, and after the event, it was reported that, from Turner himself, declared that indiscriminate slaughter was not their intention after they attained a foothold, and was resorted to in the first instance to strike terror and alarm. However, a few homes and their white inhabitants were spared because Turner believed the poor white inhabitants thought no better of themselves than they did the Negroes. It appeared that Turner's group only targeted the known slave owners and left the poor whites, who were treated almost as badly, alone. The Giles Reese plantation, where Nat's wife and children lived, was not attacked. Nat Turner confessed to killing only one person, a woman named Margaret Whitehead, whom he killed with a blow from a fence post. The last property attacked was the home of Rebecca Vaughn, where they killed the last of around 60 people. Part of his plan to enter the town of Jerusalem and take the weapons from the armory was foiled when they encountered a militia of armed white men with twice the manpower and 3 companies of artillery. The encounter happened at Belmont Plantation on the morning of August 23rd near Jerusalem, and a small battle began. Some of Turner's men were killed and wounded, and Turner himself escaped into the woods. The next day, the local militia was joined by sailors and Marines from the USS Natchez and USS Warren in Norfolk, as well as other militias from neighboring counties in Virginia, commanded by Brigadier General William Henry Broadnax and others from North Carolina. Most contemporary sources and later investigations seem to agree that between 55 and 65 white men, women, and children were murdered during Turner's rebellion. Turner had kicked over a hornet's nest, and the white mobs exacted a terrible revenge against many of the slaves, most innocent people who had no knowledge or participation in the rebellion, with estimates being between 100 and 200 blacks, many of them emancipated blacks, being killed. Many of the blacks were beheaded by the militia, and their severed heads were mounted on poles at crossroads as a grisly form of intimidation. One local road, which is now Virginia State Route 658, was named Blackhead Signpost Road, since the heads were displayed there. Rumors abounded that the slave revolt had spread as far south as Alabama. Panic led to reports in North Carolina of slave armies on highways burning and massacring the white inhabitants of Wilmington, North Carolina, and other slave groups marching on the state capitol in Raleigh. None of this was true. As a result of these rumors, whites attacked blacks without any evidence, and it became so out of control, the editor of the Richmond Whig newspaper described this scene as the slaughter of many blacks without trial and under circumstances of great barbarity. For 2 weeks after the rebellion was stopped, the killings continued until General Richard Epps ordered a halt to the killings. Epps informed Governor Floyd that about 40 of the insurgents were captured and placed in Southampton jail and turned over to the courts of that county. Turner remained at large for 6 weeks in Southampton County. His wife, Cherry, was beaten and tortured in an attempt to get her to reveal his plans and whereabouts. After the raid on the Reese plantation, the Richmond Constitutional Whig newspaper reported on September 26, 1831, that some papers were given up by his wife under the lash. The Authentic and Impartial Narrative paper published their article in 1831 claiming that journal entries belonging to Turner were in her possession after Nat's escape. On October 30th, 1831, farmer Benjamin Phipps found Turner hiding in a hole created by a large fallen tree covered with fence rails. At around 1 p.m. on October 31st, Turner was taken to the jail in Jerusalem, where he awaited trial. During this time, Turner confessed everything to pro-slavery attorney Thomas R. Gray. During the rebellion, the Virginia General Assembly targeted freed blacks with an African relocation bill and a police bill denying them trials by jury and criminal punishment by slavery and relocation. The VGA received petitions from several slave owners asking to be compensated for slaves they lost without trial due to the killings by the militias, and they were all rejected. Dozens of suspected rebels were tried by courts specially convened for the rebellion, while Turner himself was tried on November 5, 1831, for conspiring to rebel and making insurrection. His defense attorney was James Strange French, who did not have much of a case. French also represented many of the defendants, along with William Henry Broadnax and Meriwether Broadnax, and 30 slaves were convicted. 18 were hanged, 12 were sold out of state, 15 were acquitted, and 4 of the 5 freed blacks tried were acquitted, but the 5th was hanged. It came out during the trial that Turner said, "I communicated the great work laid out to do to 4 in whom I had the greatest confidence," meaning his fellow slaves known as Henry, Hark, Nelson, and Sam. Turner was convicted and sentenced to death. Nat Turner was hanged on November 11, 1831, and, according to some sources, he was beheaded to deter further rebellion. The body was dissected and flayed, and the skin used to make souvenir purses. In October 1897, Virginia newspapers reported that the skeleton was being used as a medical specimen by Dr. H.U. Stevenson of Towana, Virginia. The revolt shocked Southerners, especially slave owners, to the extent that organized emancipation of slaves by slave owners was suspended, and many Southern states enacted even harsher laws against slaves. Whites who educated blacks could themselves be hanged, or at the very least have their property confiscated and be heavily fined or imprisoned. One positive effect of Turner's rebellion was the massive increase in the abolitionist movement in the North. And abolitionist William Lloyd Garrison even published an editorial in his newspaper, The Liberator, in support of Turner and his revolt while not excusing the murders. Because Turner was an educated preacher, all of the Southern state legislatures subsequently passed new laws prohibiting the education of enslaved people and free blacks, restricting rights of assembly and other civil liberties for free blacks, and requiring white ministers to be present at all worship services. In Virginia, the future of slavery was debated the following spring, with some wanting a gradual emancipation process, but this pro-slavery side prevailed after Virginia's leading intellectual, Thomas Roderick Dew, president of the College of William and Mary, published a pamphlet defending the wisdom and benevolence of slavery and the folly of its abolition. So laws were passed in every state except Maryland, Kentucky, and Tennessee, making it a crime to teach blacks to read and write, and restricting blacks from holding religious meetings without a licensed white minister. Of interest, the sword used by Turner is displayed at the Southampton County Courthouse. In 1991, the Virginia Department of Historic Resources dedicated the Nat Turner Insurrection historic marker on Virginia Route 30 near Cortland, Virginia. Incidentally, Nat Turner's rebellion is still celebrated as part of Black August. Thank you for watching this episode of Forgotten History. If you liked what you saw, please click like, share, and subscribe. And if you would like to assist with the ever-increasing cost of production, please consider becoming a channel member and joining our Patreon page. Please check out our merchandise store. And thanks for watching.